Okay, here's your noticeable factor in the greatest common factor, which is what your GCF is. So if we're going to factor, as it says at the top of the page here, factoring is the inverse operation of distributing. Up to this point, we've put things together by multiplying. Now we want to start taking things out and breaking them into pieces that are going to be smaller. So one thing we're going to start with is factor out the greatest common factor of the coefficients. So if we start with here, this is what we've done before. So we have 3 times 2, x, which is 6x, 3 times 5, which is 15. So we're going to go the opposite way. So we're going to look at this, and we're going to say, okay, where did that come from? What's in common that goes into both 6 and 15? Well, 3 is what's in common. We put what's in common up front, and we write leftover factors inside. Now, this is the easiest way that we can do this. When we're talking about factoring, I have 6x and 15. Think about 6 and 15 here. But think about factors of those two numbers. Well, of 6, we have 1 times 6, we have 2 times 3, and then if we get 4, it doesn't go into it, and so we start over. For 15, we've got 1 times 15, and you've got 3 times 5, and then those repeat. So if you look at our common factors here, we have 1, and we have 3. What the greatest common factor is, what the G stands for. So the biggest number that goes into both. That would be our 3. So our greatest common factor is 3. How many times does 3 go into 6? 2 times, so we have 2x. How many times go into 15? 5. So the part that's left over goes in the parentheses. I want to see your terms written out on each one of these. So for example, it says, it's found for the coefficients and it's divided out of the polynomial. It's placed in front and the parentheses contain the remaining factors. You should always be able to go back and check and then speak it back together. So we've got 6 and 8. What's the largest thing that goes into 6 and 8? Would be 2. 2 times 3x is 6. 2 times 4 is 8. Circle your common factor. The common factor goes up front. What's left over goes in parentheses. You cannot leave out your addition or subtraction sign. Whatever is up in the beginning up here, that's what you should have in the middle unless you factor out a negative. Okay, number 2, 15 goes into 15 and 30. I know 5 goes into it also, but we'll look at the largest number that goes into them. Because in our factors, we don't want anything left over in here besides 1 that goes into those. So 15 times 2x is 30. 15 times 1 is 15. So if we look at our common factors here, 15 is our common factor. So we're going to write 15 in front. And we're going to write 2x minus 1 in parentheses. We should always go back and check that and see that that goes back to what we originally started with. Okay, on number 3, we don't want to leave a negative in the first term in parentheses. So, if we have a negative that starts here, we want to take that number out. 12 is the largest number that goes into both 12 and 36. So we want to take the negative out front. So we have negative 12 times 1x equals negative 12. Negative 12 times negative 3 equals 36. Notice right here, we had to have this sign has to be the same as this one, which means that we have to change this so that negative becomes negative, gives us back positive. This one should multiply to give us 36. This one should multiply to give us negative 12. Let our common term out front. Give x either plus a negative 3, or more commonly, x minus 3. And if we double check, just like we did before, you multiply negative and anything in parentheses, it's going to change your sign. So negative times positive is negative 12. Negative times negative is going to be positive 36. So and that's what this tells you right here. When factoring, the first term parentheses should be positive. Okay, so sometimes when we factor this out, like this, we have to factor it. Notice it changed the sign inside. To factor this out, it had to become negative. Okay, so sometimes you have terms that have a common factor that is a letter. It's not just a number. Same thing here. We just did this about multiplying x times x, and we got x squared. X times 3, we got 3x. So we have letters in both front and inside our column. So when we factor it, we do the same thing. Sometimes it's a number in column, sometimes it's a letter, sometimes it's both. In this case, x is in common, that's what goes out front. These are especially important to write each one out. If you write them out completely, you're not going to be confused. We have 2 x's here. We have 9 times x here. We have an x in common. Can't circle both because we don't have 2 in common. We only have 1. So x goes out front. X plus 9 is what's left over. There's nothing in here that can be divided out or that's the same besides 1. Raise up for number 5. We have negative 3 times x times x. Here we have 2 times x. So think about what we have in common here. We have our x's. But think about that rule that we set up there at the top. The first one in parentheses should be positive. So we have to take the negative out of this. So if I take a negative out front, that's negative 1 x. Here's our parentheses. 3x, and we have a 2. But think about, this has to be a positive 2. So to get positive 2, I have to have negative times negative. So taking out a negative changes that sign. If we go back and check, these 2 multiply to give us negative 3x squared. These 2 multiply to give us positive 2x. So our answer is correct. You may see this one written with just the negative x out front instead of the 1. You can do that anyway. Okay, for number 6, we have 5 and 3 x's. We have 6 and 2 x's. So if we look at what's in common, we have 2 x's in each one. X times x is x squared. And it left over 5x plus 6. There's nothing in common with the 5x and the 6. And x squared is up front. If we multiply that together, we come up with those same values. Okay, we can't have both. So in these problems, we're going to have both that are factored out. This is where it's really helpful to write out each term, because that way you don't have to worry about what you're missing. We have 2 and 2 x's. 2 does go into 8 evenly 4 times. It happens to be the largest number that goes into it. So here we have a 2 and an x, and a 2 and an x. So the number that goes out front is a 2 with 1 letter. In parentheses we have x plus 4. Left over. Number 8, we have 6 and 3 x's. 6 times 3 is 18 with 1x. We notice what we have in common. We have a 6 and an x. I know that goes into both of those, but we want the largest term. So we take out 6x. We have parentheses, x squared minus squared. And that's as small as it can go. So no matter how many terms that we have, we can take as many things out as we need to. 15, 9, and 18, the largest that goes into that is 3. So 3 times 5, 3 x's. 3 times 3 is 9 with 2 x's. And 3 times 6 is 18 with 1 x. So if we look at what's in common, we have 3, 3, and 3. Not both of them, just one. And 1 x with each. So in front, Common term is 3x. First time we had left is 5x squared. Plus, at the same time, we did not take out a negative, minus 6. We multiply each of these back together, we're going to get back our original term, and there's nothing inside here that can be divisible except 1. And that's how we use back to our common factor.